The most obsolete idea today is go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, get out of debt, and invest long-term in the stock market. Why would you save money when governments are printing trillions of dollars? The gap between the 1% and the 99% is massive. But it's not just about money. You have to step back and see the bigger picture. So what do? Inside every one of us, there's a poor person, a middle-class person, and a rich person. The middle-class person wants security. They want that steady paycheck. The rich person, they think differently. But none of this is taught. You're taught to go to school, get a job, and rely on a paycheck. You're not taught how to get rich. If you've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you'll know my rich dad refused to pay me. He believed that the paycheck was one of the most damaging things you could rely on. The moment you take a paycheck, you're an employee, and that becomes your mindset. My rich dad never paid me, and it drove my poor dad, a government employee, nuts. They always need entrepreneurs. Being an entrepreneur is about mindset, skill set, and understanding a different set of rules. Small businesses don't operate under the same rules as big corporations. Employees, small business owners, and entrepreneurs all play by different rules and think differently. If someone has never been an entrepreneur and they're thinking about taking the leap, here's what I'd tell them. I remember my last paycheck like it was yesterday. It was one of the worst and best days of my life. I was working for Xerox in Puerto Rico. My boss gave me a bonus check, about $30,000, taxable, of course. I was excited but also disturbed. Then a colleague named John came up and said, "You'll be back." I asked him why. He said, "Because you're going to fail." I looked at him and said, "You failed and came back. I'll fail, but I'm never coming back." That's the attitude you need. If your plan is, if I fail, I'll just go back to mom and dad, then you probably will. When I failed, I had no money, no paycheck, and that's exactly what my rich dad wanted. Without a paycheck, you get hungrier, smarter. It tests your character. Will you cheat? Will you lie? Or will you become better? Being an entrepreneur forces you to find out who you really are. You learn to see the big picture. When something bad happens, something good is usually right around the corner. But you have to prepare. If you think the next 20 years will be like the last 20, you're going to get crushed. Think about it. When you buy milk, you check the expiration date. But most people never check the expiration date on their ideas. Instead of getting out of debt, I get into debt. I just refinanced $300 million in debt, reducing my interest rate from 5% to 2.5%. I made a fortune. More money comes in every month because my cost of money went down. Some experts say, get out of debt. I say, learn how to use debt. When I returned from Vietnam in 1973, my rich dad told me to go to school, not just for real estate, but to learn how to use debt and taxes. Debt and taxes make the rich richer and the poor and middle class poorer. Doctors, lawyers, many of them are getting crushed, and they don't know why. My own doctor proudly told me he made $1 million last year and paid $750,000 in taxes. He netted $250,000. When I make $1 million, I keep it. Why? Because I don't work for money. Lesson number 1 in Rich Dad. Poor Dad is this. The rich don't work for money. We create businesses. We acquire assets like real estate. I don't invest in the stock market because as an entrepreneur, I have control over my income and my taxes. Every time I make $1 million, I invest it into real estate and leverage it 4 to 1. That means I can borrow $4 million from the bank. I love banks. For me, not for everyone else. When the system prints more money, savers and employees get crushed. Debtors get rich. Debt and taxes make the rich richer and the poor poorer. Obsolete ideas create obsolete results. Go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, buy a house, and invest for the long term. That stopped working in 1971 when Nixon took us off the gold standard and money became debt. Should we get rid of school? Number education is still important, but what we teach is outdated. According to Moore's law, information now doubles every 18 months. That means when you graduate, your knowledge is already obsolete. Today, banks are charging interest to save money. They don't want it. There's too much of it in circulation. That's why we have bubbles in stocks and real estate. People are dumping cash because, as I've said before, cash is trash. The real problem? People want high-paying jobs. That's an obsolete idea. So is getting out of debt. You should learn how to use debt. And they'll never teach you about taxes. That's why the 1% are getting richer while the 99% are falling behind. When governments print money, inflation and taxes increase. That crushes the average person. There are over 28 million small business owners in the US, and 24 million of them are solo entrepreneurs. They think they're entrepreneurs, but they're self-employed. And self-employed people pay the highest taxes of all. There's no such thing as a bad economy. There's only your economy, your internal economy. The poor person with a poor internal economy only sees a bad external economy. A middle-class person sees a disrupted lifestyle when their job is taken away. But for the entrepreneur, losing a job is no big deal. We don't have one anyway. Bucky Fuller taught me there are always two sides. If you think the economy is bad, it's because your economy is bad. It's about internal versus external focus. The real entrepreneur has an internal focus. When they fall, they say, "This is good because I'm going to rise higher."